Check, mic check. Check, mic check. You have an idea for a podcast and you are super excited to get started. Woohoo! Congratulations. I am 100% authentically excited for you. I am Andrea Klunder, your podcast boss, and this is Podcast Envy. And this episode is for pod dreamers only. What the heck is a pod dreamer? Well, it's probably you. If you already have your podcast and you've already launched or you've been podcasting for a while, this episode may not be for you, but I have one for you. I have an episode for newbies only, and I have an episode for that mid-career podcaster. Do I have an episode for the super expert, I've been podcasting since before there were iPhones podcaster? Probably not. I haven't been there. I don't know what to say. But yes, newbies, dreamers, and mid-career podcasters, I got you covered. So if you have not launched your show yet, but you have this idea, maybe you've even purchased the domain for a year or 2 years, or you're just kind of testing it out, here is what I recommend. Try it on. Try it on like you would that really sparkly dress or those new shiny shoes or that necktie that is just a little louder than what you typically would wear. Try it on. See how it feels. See how it fits. Podcasting is amazing. I love making podcasts, and it's super trendy and popular right now to say, hey, I've just launched a podcast. Hey, I'm launching a podcast. Hey, have you heard my podcast? Hey, did you know I have a podcast? Super popular and trendy right now, which is fantastic because I am always looking for new content as a listener and consumer of podcasts. And because I think there are more and more diverse, unique voices out there who are starting podcasts and adding more to the conversation and adding more to the community at large. However, as with any popular trend, there are a lot of people who are going to jump and then be like, oh, this is a lot of work. This takes a lot of time. I don't want to pay $500 a month for someone to edit my show that nets me $0. Oh, I didn't know it was going to take me 10 to 15 hours to produce a single episode. Oh, I thought I would launch my show and I would immediately have 5,000 downloads per episode per month and all of these adoring fans who would just come through the Apple Podcast gateways to listen to my fabulous show. I mean, it's a good idea. It's a good show. I've done everything right. Why am I only getting 50, 100, 150, 500, whatever you think is an absurdly low number of downloads for your episode? Why am I getting that? Is this even worth it? Is anyone even listening past the first 5 seconds? Are you still listening to me on this weird off the top of my head rant? Well, if you are, then I believe there is hope for the indie podcaster. There really is. And there's value to producing your show, even if it does take 10 to 15 hours or cost $500 a month or takes 5 years to build up what feels like a solid listenership. There really is. And it all depends upon you. It depends on why you're choosing to do this. So here are a few things I'd like you to consider. 1, whatever your topic is or the main idea behind your show, I want you to shop it around. So I knew that I wanted to launch a podcast because I love listening to podcasts. Like, the podcast was the thing, the format, the medium was the thing driving me to want to start my first podcast, which is the Creative Impostor. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted my show to be about. I had a few ideas of things that I'm interested in. And so I brainstormed a list of those different ideas and picked the one that felt the most interesting to me, where I could think of people I wanted to talk to and interview, and I could think of episodes that I would do for that show. And I could even think of who the audience might be. And I started to shop it around very casually. I would meet people out and about in social and professional situations, and I'd say, oh, I'm Andrea Klunder. Hi, Andrea, nice to meet you. What do you do? Well, I'm getting ready to launch a podcast. Ooh, that's cool. What's your podcast about? Well, my podcast is about kirtan. Have you ever heard of kirtan? No, what's that? Well, kirtan is this form of musical meditation based on the Hindu tradition in India. It's very closely tied with yoga practices, and you chant mantras and set it to music, and you perform in a call and response style so that the audience gets to participate, and it creates this certain kind of energy. And by this time, that person is already looking for someone else to talk to, or their eyes have glazed over, or they're shifting uncomfortably, or they listen to your whole spiel and then they're like, cool. And then there's this awkward pause and they don't know what to say next. Cool idea for a podcast. In fact, there are some podcasts about kirtan, and I am still very passionately interested in that and involved in that community, not the podcast I launched. So I had a few other ideas, and I landed on this idea of a creative entrepreneurial podcast. Believe me, there are millions of those, specifically around the idea of imposter syndrome, which a lot of those shows talk about, but I couldn't find one show that was specifically dedicated to that topic. And so I decided to start from there. I called it the Creative Impostor. And before I ever started the show, believe me, I did buy the domain right away as soon as it popped into my head and I saw that it was available. But before I ever launched the show, I started saying, I'm getting ready to launch this podcast called The Creative Impostor. Pause. Ooh, what's that? It's a show about creativity, entrepreneurship, and imposter syndrome. Oh, imposter syndrome. I think I have that. I got that response a few times. Oh, I need to listen to that. I definitely have that thing, that imposter thing. And so ding, 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 that's how I knew that was my topic. I tried it out. I tried talking about it. I made a list of potential episodes and things that we could talk about. I made a list of people I can interview about that, or people that I heard talking about imposter syndrome on this interview or this blog or that video. And it seemed solid. I was interested. I was curious, so I followed my curiosity and also did a little bit of informal market research to make sure that there was an intersection between my curiosity and my interest and the curiosity and interest of my potential listening audience. So do that. Take your topic, shop it around, tell people, I'm getting ready to launch this podcast about blah, 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 and see how they respond. Do they ask you questions? Are they interested? Not everyone will be, but you at least need some. Also, invest in getting started the right way. That may be hiring a coach to help cut your learning curve. I did not hire a podcasting coach nor take a podcasting class or workshop or online course, but it also took me a year of researching free, sometimes outdated online tools and resources, and a lot of trial and error, and also getting help from my partner who is a filmmaker and had a lot of digital recording and editing experience. He basically taught me how to edit my own shows in both Audacity and Adobe Audition, which is what I use now. And my learning curve would have been a lot slower and more painful if not for that. So invest either the money in getting someone to help you or the time in carefully researching and learning how to do it yourself. Make sure you have decent equipment, but don't go buy a $500 microphone. You don't necessarily need that. You need a decent microphone, better than the one on your earbuds, better than the one that comes installed in your laptop, but probably not the $500 one. Something in between. And then make a list. Make a list of everyone that you would want to talk to if you're doing an interview-based show, or all the different topics that you would want to explore if you're doing a solo or a co-hosted show, or if you're doing some weird experimental format or a storytelling-based show. Again, come up with those stories. Stories. Did I say stories? I did. Come up with those stories that you want to tell. And make sure you've got a good long list of stuff to talk about or questions to ask or people to connect with before you ever hit submit. Oh, listen to that. It's the podcast angel music. That must mean that I am about to tell you about some angels who help keep this podcast going into your earbuds. Ready? Here we go. This episode is supported by Ecamm Call Recorder for Skype and FaceTime. So, Call Recorder from Ecamm is what I have been using for my interviews on The Creative Impostor for years. What I love most about Ecamm that is different than a lot of the other software programs is that you only have to pay one time. What? No monthly fees? Ecamm Call Recorder for Skype and FaceTime. Please link to it from the show notes for this episode or head over to podcastenvy.com under podcasting resources. And when you do, I'll get a little thank you from Ecamm in return. And then finally, my last bit of advice, because I don't want this episode to drag on too long, or your eyes are going to start to glaze over and you'll be like, oh my God, this is so much to think about and so much to do before I ever even get started. What on earth have I gotten myself into? I'm out. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want you to pod fade before you've ever even started. I want you to know that you can do this, and I do want you to think about some things before you do. So test your idea. Invest a little bit of time or money in making sure you do it right. Brainstorm your list of ideas. And then as you get started, as you get launched, know that there's probably going to be some kind of a learning curve. And it's different for everyone depending upon what your skill set and your aptitude for certain things are. So maybe you're really good at the tech stuff, but the actual storytelling, content, interview style is a little bit shaky for you, and you know you need to work on that area. Maybe you're self-conscious about the sound of your own voice and you feel like it could be a little bit louder, more resonant, a little bit more expressive or interesting to listen to. Maybe content, voice, performance, all that kind of stuff is great for you, but the tech is a little sketchy and the quality of your show doesn't sound great. It's okay. You will get better with time if you continue to ask questions and want to get better with time. And I do recommend that you do that. See where you're strong, see where you're less strong, see what resources and advice are out there, and make sure that you are launching and producing this podcast because you actually want to podcast. So if you are someone who only wants to podcast because you have a product to sell or a service to sell, and somebody told you that this would be a great way to do that, but you have no interest in the format of podcasting or the medium of podcasting, you don't really listen to podcasts much, walk away now. There are easier, faster ways to sell that product or service. And you don't have to love everything about podcasting. You might really love the interview part, talking to other people and expanding your network and your circle of influence, but you may not love the tech part, the editing part. Look, if that's you, great. Hire it out. Find someone else to do it. You might love editing and feel like it's so fun, but you hate the marketing part. Great. You can hire that out or get a consultant, find someone else to do it, or just power through knowing that the ability to produce your own content is worth the pain and suffering of marketing. Pod Dreamer, you can do this. You can do this. Test your idea. And if your idea isn't quite landing, shift it, tweak it, find something a little bit different, find a different aspect of that idea to talk about, find a different format, or find a different audience. I don't know. Invest a little bit, brainstorm a list of episodes that really excite you and are going to motivate you to keep you going past episode 8, 10, 20, 50, 100. And then as you try it out, see what parts of the podcasting process you really, really love, like actually love doing. And when the going gets tough or the download numbers are low or it feels like the last thing you want to do is edit another interview on Saturday night, connect with the part of it that you love, connect with that passion, and that is going to help propel you forward. This has been Podcast Envy for Pod Dreamers. I'm Andrea Klunder, your podcast boss. You can get notes to this show as well as a lovely little podcast something from me when you drop your email at podcastenvy.com. And hey, need a little coaching, some one-on-one support for launching your show? Want to cut that learning curve and that timeline? I can help you with that. There's a full list of my services on that page as well. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Impostor Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.